Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Pens Iceberg. I'm your host, Casey Stamp, alongside our Iceberg panel, as always, Luke Courtwright. Thanks for being with us tonight. Great to have you on.
It's great to be back.
Absolutely great to be back, especially considering the circumstances. And Jason Kaczynski joins us here as well. Thanks for being with us. Jason, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Looks like Thanksgiving came early for Pens fans.
Absolutely. Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, all wrapped into one. Well, folks, I don't think the topic needs any introduction. We're going to break down Sidney Crosby's return last night and his 4-point game from every angle. We'll also be talking about Sid's future and the season ahead of him. We'll be breaking down the Eastern Conference one quarter of the way through this NHL season and discuss who the teams to beat are in the East. And as always, we'll be finishing up with game prediction. Stay tuned. We've got a lot coming your way right here on Pens Iceberg. Welcome back. 321 days ago, the Pittsburgh Penguins captain Sidney Crosby suffered the second of two concussions that would sideline him for nearly a year. The first came in the Winter Classic when David Steckel hit Sidney Crosby with an elbow to the head. The second came in a game against Tampa Bay where Victor Hedman boarded Sidney Crosby and ultimately would end his season. Rumors began to circulate throughout last year's playoffs that Sidney Crosby might make a return, but he would ultimately suffer a setback and would have to watch the Pens lose Game 7 and end their season on a shutout. Ever since training camp this year, experts have been poking and predicting at dates that the NHL's greatest player would make his return, but all throughout the organization, specifically Dan Bylsma, Ray Shero, and Sidney Crosby himself, insisted that there would be no timetable set for his return. After a few too many interviews about his condition, Sidney stopped talking to the media altogether. This left the coaches and teammates to answer for him. The team did well without their captain leading the Atlantic Division in the Eastern Conference most of the way. Perhaps the most significant prediction for his return was on 11-11-11 when the Pittsburgh Penguins faced off against the Western Conference leading Dallas Stars. Many experts were convinced that Sid would make his return on that day, but ultimately to no avail. A few softer, less publicized dates would then emerge, all of which would just turn out to be rumors. November 20th, 2011, Sidney Crosby announced that he was cleared to play and would make his return on the following night against the New York Islanders. Pittsburgh fans rejoiced as all of their waiting had finally paid off. No more talk of timetables or symptoms, dates, or rumors, just hockey. Luke, where were you when you heard the news that Sidney Crosby was going to make his return?
Well, it was funny because I was actually on my way out the door, but I caught a quick glance of Twitter and saw it pop up, and on the inside I was jumping up and down. But in less than an hour, I had gone down into downtown Chicago, and it was rolling by on every news ticker down there. So it was really great to see coverage all over.
And Jason, how about you?
I was doing what everybody would not want to be doing on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I was raking leaves and doing yard work. And my phone started to blow up with texts about, have you heard and can't believe it. And I kind of had a feeling what it was, but I sort of stopped what I was doing and checked my Twitter feed. And, sure enough, it was good news all around. And the yard work did get done, but in record time, I should say.
As for myself, I was in IHOP enjoying my breakfast, and I was with my father enjoying my breakfast in IHOP, and he pulled up Twitter on his phone, and sure enough, there it was, and I nearly spit out my coffee. Everyone was turned around looking at me. There I'm sitting at my booth wearing my Pittsburgh Penguins Winter Classic jacket, and I was overjoyed, and certainly it was not just good news in our eyes and in Pens fans' eyes, but good news in the eyes of all NHL fans. Last night, Sid made his return against the Isles, and the crowd went berserk when they announced his name during the pregame warm-ups. First period, the Pens started off their offense quickly as Sid would come right out of the gate looking for spectacular as he would make a great pass to Chris Kunitz, who would eventually hit the crossbar, but you could sense that a goal wasn't far off. Pens certainly had that momentum early, a storybook return that Hollywood couldn't have scripted. The first goal of this game would be scored at 5:27 of the first by number 87 himself to give the Pens the 1-0 lead on an absolutely gorgeous backhander past the Islanders goalie making his first ever NHL appearance, Andres Nielsen, and that really gave the crowd something to cheer about. Jason, you were there. You were at the game last night. Describe the atmosphere after that sort of welcome back moment for Sid.
It was definitely, I mean, it's cliche, but it was pretty electric. You could tell there was a lot of emotion in the building. Everyone anxious to see Sid just on the ice, no matter what would happen during the game. But The Crosby chant started right off the opening face-off, and as you could tell right off the bat, his legs were going, and you knew he had it. And I think the crowd was kind of feeding off those first few quick shifts, just him getting some chances, and you could tell something was going to go in pretty soon for somebody, whether it was Kunitz or Malkin or Sid, and it was just a great night.
And certainly the emotion of the crowd, the emotion of the players, the fans, the coaches, and the staff certainly showed on the face of Sidney Crosby after he netted his first of the season. Then toward the end of the period, Pascal Dupuis would make a fantastic play to keep the puck in the Pens' offensive zone as it looked to be headed the other way, and a fantastic pass from Sid to Brooks Orpik would give Orpik his second of the year and Sid his second point of the evening. Luke, how important was it for Sid to come right out of the gate firing and sort of prove to everybody that he hasn't lost a step?
I think we all kind of expected it. You'd think that getting that first goal out of the way will put his mind at ease a little bit. He's not going to be gripping that stick too tightly, like we kind of saw with Steve Sullivan there for a little while. But it was also a big deal for the team as a whole, I think. Jack Capuano had come out to the media in the days prior and really ripped into his team a little bit, the effort they were giving. So coming into this game, you would think that they were actually going to come out really hard. But Crosby scored, and there was never much response from the Islanders.
Sid had such a, I guess, calmness on his face, even though the game was played at such a fast pace and speed, that he looked at home, and it was nice to see. I'd liken it to, an animal being let out of a cage and just sort of, being able to roam free for the first time in a long time. And just to preface that was saying that I think the Islanders pretty much fed Anders Nilsson, making his first career start to the Wolves last night. I don't know how much of a chance they had to start the game anyway, but it certainly didn't help his confidence and everything. But I think Sid basically showed us what we all sort of knew deep down, but definitely needed to see some proof with our eyes, and he gave us that right off the bat.
And more offense for the Pens in the second as Sidney Crosby would rack up his third point of the night off an assist from an Evgeny Malkin power play goal. And wow, how incredible was it to see those two back on the same ice together. Jason, in your opinion, is there a more dangerous duo in the league?
No, definitely not. I think you have some lines that really have some chemistry together, and Crosby and Malkin are unique because they usually don't play together except for on the power play and the occasional odd shift when they're trying to get the offense going. But they're two of the most talented players in the game on offensive and defensive side of the puck. They try to make things happen, and they're smart. Sometimes Malkin, and he was a little bit visibly, I guess, frustrated at times last night when he was trying to force some things. But anytime Sid's been on the lineup, it seems like Malkin sort of carried the load a little bit, and maybe Sid's had seen Sid with flashes of brilliance, and Malkin's kind of been quiet. We've never really seen them click on a tremendous pace at the same time, and right now is I think it's what a lot of Pens fans are waiting for, to finally see that happen and put the rest of the NHL on notice.
Yeah, as far as duos go, I think you can look at Steven Stamkos and Martin St. Louis, but they play together a lot, whereas Crosby and Malkin, of course, not really, aside from the power play and in tight games there. So it's a slightly different situation there. Kane and Taves for the Blackhawks, I think they garner a mention too, but between Crosby and Malkin, they're really something else and really on top of the charts, in my opinion, and most Pens fans, I think. Add Jordan Staal to that mix, and it's a rough matchup for every single team in this league.
Absolutely, and definitely the Pens power play, which has made huge strides, already looking fantastic with Sid and Malkin back together on it. Later in the period, it would be Steve Sullivan that would get his second of the year with assist to James Neal and Evgeny Malkin, and the second would end with the Pens up 4-0. And let's not forget the amazing play of the goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury, who was setting the mood for his press conference earlier today, where he announced the launch of his new cereal, Fleury Flakes. And you gotta love the guy, so much charisma. And I'm definitely gonna pick up a box for myself online. Sidney Crosby would continue to dominate in this game in the third, scoring his second goal of the evening on yet another amazing backhand shot. So a 4-point night for Sid, and the Pens would go on to win 5-0. Luke, they say great players live for great moments. Can you ever remember an instance where a player has been able to dominate in his return like Sid did last night?
Well, his former landlord wasn't too bad himself. There was that one game in the Philadelphia Spectrum in 1993. I'm pretty sure you guys know the one I'm going to talk about, but Mario Lemieux went in for his final chemo treatment in the morning, I believe. Came back that night and scored 5 goals, which is just mind-blowing to me. The Philly fans gave him a standing ovation, which, if you've ever been to a game in Philly, I mean, just watching it on TV a lot of the time, it's really tough to swallow that idea, I guess. So that in my mind is a situation that I can't see ever popping up again.
No, definitely. I mean, the comparisons to Lemieux are, I think, kind of inevitable. Mario's comeback was a little different in the fact that I don't think anybody really expected him to ever play again. He's working out in secret, and then all of a sudden he throws out a date that says he's back, and he scored pretty early on too. 33 seconds in, I think Yager scored a goal that actually had to be reviewed, and got sort of delayed reaction from the crowd. But great players live for great moments like that. They like when the spotlight's on them. They want to share the world what they have to offer as athletes and competitors, and we're seeing that from Sid now. So the comparisons to Mario are pretty spot on.
Absolutely, and well deserved. The spotlight was on Sid last night, and he just knocked it out of the park. He did about as well as a player can do in any game, and it's a long ways off. But I hear a lot of doubters saying that Sidney Crosby can't come back from behind and win the scoring title. Jason, is the word "can't" even applicable to Sidney Crosby?
Definitely not, because what he'll do is he'll turn it on you and use it as motivation for himself. Whether it's twisting someone's words to just kind of manufacture some motivation. I know Michael Jordan was kind of famous for that in the NBA for a long time. But if you tell somebody that they can't do something, it just feeds their desire to prove you wrong. And it's not impossible for Sid. If anyone can do it, it's definitely him. He cut up Alex Ovechkin, pretty quick in the scoring race. He's only 6 points off. But Phil Kessel's a little bit different. We've never seen him for the quite extended pace that he's been on so far this season. But it's definitely doable for Crosby. Whether it happens, I don't know. But it'll be good fun watching him try.
Yeah, I'm a big Crosby supporter. I think he's going to put up some big numbers here, and Phil Kessel in particular, he's the guy who I think is going to drop off some here. He's always been kind of an inconsistent player. But it's very hard for me to think that in this day and age someone can win a scoring title while only playing 60 games in a year. If anyone can do it, I would think it would be Sid. But honestly, that doesn't mean I think it will happen. Fingers crossed, though.
Absolutely. At least leaving a little bit of possibility there. And as you said, Luke, if anyone can do it, it's going to be Sidney Crosby. So Phil Kessel, look out. So many good things Sidney Crosby brings to the team, obviously. But in terms of just hockey itself, in terms of the game, what does this do for the NHL? And how important is it to have the face of hockey back?
It gets people talking, which for the NHL, which has often been the redheaded stepchild of the major four sports in America, it's incredibly important. You have some people swooning over him, some people whining and complaining about him, but he's always the guy who the media picks up on. And we all know we're in the midst of this NBA lockout. The more talking points, the merrier for the NHL, and Crosby is the biggest thing the league has. If they can capitalize on that, it's a big deal. I personally am not an ESPN watcher, but I would imagine that they would have to talk about this game this afternoon and this evening, about just his performance coming back with 4 points like he did. He is an exceptional tool to grow the game in America.
Definitely agree with that. I'm very curious to see what the ratings grab was for Versus nationally after pulling the Bruins Montreal game in favor of the Pens Isles. like you said, Sidney Crosby transcends to the casual sports fan. It gives somebody, the water cooler talk of the office. When they see that he's been out for almost a year and scores 4 points in his first game back, it gets people talking. And you want to showcase your best players in the league, and he is, without a doubt, the best player in the league.
Absolutely. And going back to what Luke said about ESPN, I'm not an ESPN watcher either myself, but I did tune in last night. Surprisingly little mention. I mean, they did say something. They did have, I believe it was Barry Melrose on, but surprisingly little mention of the game. I was actually sort of shocked, especially in the midst of this NBA lockout, as you were saying, and not having baseball be in season at the time. I was kind of shocked, but in any case, everybody welcomes Sid back with open arms, and I don't care if you're a Flyer fan, a Ranger fan, an Islander fan, or what have you. You got to have respect for what this man does for the sport. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break here, and when we return, we're going to be talking about the teams to beat in the East. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Boston Bruins, Stanley Cup champions from 2011, have won 9 straight games in a row now. Another team in the East that's off to a terrific start, the New York Rangers. But when you talk about the Eastern Conference, so many dangerous teams out there. We're going to play a little pitch and catch here. I'll throw out the credentials, and you guys give your top teams. You ready?
Sounds good.
All right, Jason, give us your top 4 most dangerous teams in the East.
Number 4 is kind of teetering on the brink right now. I'm going to go with the Washington Capitals. I have no idea what's going on in D.C. There's an obvious rift between Alex Ovechkin and his coach, Bruce Boudreau. That being said, I think they're too talented to fall too far off. I expect Mike Knuble to kind of take control of that dressing room and get the team back on track. Number 3 is Buffalo. Give Lindy Ruff a full season with some new parts, and he's going to get them playing together. They haven't really missed a beat in the goaltending department with Ryan Miller going down. They've had a little trouble scoring at the moment, but I think that can be corrected. Number 2 is the Boston Bruins. Don't give up on the defending Cup champs. After an early swoon, they've kind of weathered a rough patch and are now on a 9-game win streak. They've done it last year and pretty much returned the same team minus Mark Recchi. And number 1, I try not to be a homer here, but you got to go with Pittsburgh. I mean, they're the deepest team in the league when healthy. They can roll 3 scoring lines in the playoffs when the third line is also a shutdown line. Solid deep pairings, and they have a Coupland and goalie who's just looking phenomenal right now. So I have to give them the number 1 slot.
All right, Luke, let's hear your top 4.
Well, Jason puts me in the terrible position of having the same exact list. Washington at 4 here. They really haven't played well, but you did use the word dangerous, and if there's a dangerous team in the Eastern Conference, it's definitely Washington. We all know about the talent they have. They're bound to turn it around at some point. Probably need a shakeup, but they can definitely do some things in the Eastern Conference. Buffalo at 3. Again, not a team that's played exceptionally well here. Great skating and great two-way play there. Ryan Miller is bound to find his game, and Jonas Enroth here has stood on his head pretty nicely for them. Boston, they've had this hot streak here after a rough start, but they have tremendous depth up front and on the back end. And with Tyler Seguin really coming into his own, they can do some things here. And of course, Pittsburgh at number 1. What haven't we already said about these guys? Tremendous skating, defensive play, great on the forecheck, and really coming into their own on special teams. It's hard not to get excited about this team. And since we did have identical lists, I'll give a little shout out to the Philadelphia Flyers here. I know we don't like to heap too much praise on them, but they definitely have the talent. Claude Giroux, really never expected him to be a true superstar in this league, but alongside Jágr, he's putting up some pretty huge numbers here.
Absolutely, and alongside Jágr. Jágr makes everyone that he steps on the ice with better, and it's good to have the Iceberg panel in sync on that list. All right, Jason, team most likely to fizzle out in the second half.
I think in the West right now, I'm going to go with Minnesota. I like what Montreal has really done for this team so far. They bought into the system. They're currently first in the West. Really defensive-minded team. But I just don't think they have enough depth. Their first line is it's obviously pretty top heavy. I expect Vancouver to kind of make a run for the division. I don't think Minnesota in the end kind of scores enough goals to keep them in contention.
Okay, how about in the East?
The East, right now I'm not sold exactly on the Florida Panthers, but I'd probably mention them at the moment. I like what they're doing right now. They have 11 new players in the off season and really coming together. A good skating team, as the Pens saw firsthand on Saturday. Solid goaltending and a really great top line and a lot of scoring for their D-men. I don't know if they can sustain it, so I'll say they're probably the most likely to fizzle.
Absolutely. Luke, give us your biggest underachiever thus far.
I think it has to be the Washington Capitals. We had already brought them up already, but personally, I think Bruce Boudreau's time in Washington might be coming to an end here. Maybe not during the season, but perhaps at the end. And you've got to wonder what they're going to do with Alexander Semin. He's in his contract year, headed towards unrestricted free agency, and was a healthy scratch for their last game here. So George McPhee is going to have some big decisions to make here.
Absolutely. They do seem to follow a little bit of a timeline. They go through one of these tough stretches pretty much at the beginning of every year after a great start. All right. Jason, top 3 goalie tandems in the East.
Number 3, I had the Buffalo Sabres. Jonas Enroth has really helped carry the team since Ryan Miller has been injured. I think Miller is just too good of a goalie not to bounce back from a difficult start and his injury problems. Whether he earns that spot back is kind of the question that remains to be seen there. Number 2 is Boston. Tim Thomas is looking like the ageless wonder, and they're kind of innovating Tuukka Rask, solid young netminder, into the mix there. Number 1, I have to go with Fleury and Brent Johnson. Even though I don't think Johnson's been as good as he has been last year, I just think that the team in front of those netminders is just superb, just defensively, and will kind of help them carry through any rough patches either one might have.
Luke, team most likely to win their divisions.
It's funny because I would actually go with the exact same picks I would have had at the beginning of the season, so not much has changed here. In the East, I would go with Pittsburgh, Boston, and Washington. Again, Washington needs to kind of pick it up here, but it would not surprise me. In the West, Chicago, Vancouver, and San Jose, with Vancouver kind of being the outlier right now. But like we had mentioned before, Minnesota might not be able to keep it up. I don't think Vancouver's going to have a problem leapfrogging Edmonton either. So pretty straightforward there, I think.
Absolutely. Jason, most improved team in the East.
I have to go with the same team I picked as the most likely to fizzle, just because we haven't seen it yet, is the Florida Panthers. I really like what Dale Talon's done in Florida. He rebuilt the team in Chicago and probably doesn't get enough credit there. They had to spend some money to get to the cap floor, and they have a new coach and 11 new players. And the one thing I think that kind of concerns me is that it's still the Florida Panthers. They haven't made the playoffs in ages, and the fan base is trying to embrace this team again. So we'll see if they give this team the support it's looking like it deserves right now.
All right, and finally, Luke, we'll start with you here. Team most likely to win the conference and go to the finals.
Well, I think we're going to see a Pittsburgh-Chicago matchup as of right now. Two teams that are incredibly deep down the middle, have a ton of size, can really skate on the back end. Solid, maybe not outstanding goaltending, but I think they match up well, and I think that would be a real treat to see in the Stanley Cup Finals.
I definitely love to see that. And I think a series again with those two teams would be great. I just think the San Jose Sharks probably get it done this year, and I just think they've been together too long. They've added some new pieces that can really change that team in a playoff series. So I like Pittsburgh and San Jose.
Pittsburgh and San Jose, and Chicago and Pittsburgh either way. Looks like Pittsburgh's going to get to the finals if we have our way. And there you have it. We've got plenty more NHL games to be played. Excited to see what happens, definitely. And guys, thank you for all your input there. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got some game prediction. As always, stay tuned. Welcome back. Casey Stamp alongside Luke Courtwright and Jason Kaczynski. Next up for the Pens, the St. Louis Blues. And the Blues, of course, now 4-0-2 under the new head coach, Ken Hitchcock. Jason, we'll start with you. What do you expect to see in this game?
I expect the Pens to kind of to ride the wave of emotion off the Sidney Crosby return. I think the next few games are home, and the crowd will be excited to see Sid back. Just don't underestimate St. Louis. They have a new coach, and traditionally teams have played well under new head coaches. It kind of gives them a boost, and St. Louis has a good mix of young forwards and some talented veterans. They're a defensive team, but I expect Pittsburgh to roll their depth and kind of to break them there. I'll go with a 4-2 Pens win.
I'm thinking the exact same thing here. I was imagining a 4-2 victory here for the Penguins. All good things must come to an end at some point. I think St. Louis is certainly headed in the right direction. That trade last season, picking up Chris Stewart and Kevin Shattenkirk in the Eric Johnson trade, I think that was highway robbery in their favor. I still think they're a couple pieces away from making a whole lot of noise, but I also envision a 4-2 victory here for Pittsburgh.
All right, and then from there, the Penguins will take on the Ottawa Senators. Always fun when the Pens match up with the Senators. Luke, give us your thoughts on this game.
Well, Paul McLean and his mustache have done a tremendous job with Ottawa. I'm sure the Pens are going to be banking on Zbigniew Michalek to shut down his brother Milan, who's been off to a really great start for the Senators. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than we've been used to here, but I think the Pens can pull it out by a score of 2-1.
Yeah, I definitely see this being a little bit tighter game. I hope they don't underestimate Ottawa. They've kind of rebounded from a really tough start. They're in the thick of contention here in the East. Erik Karlsson is looking like a really good young quarterback on the power play, and they got some good young players in Bobby Butler. Chris Nielsen also having a good season so far. I just don't want to underestimate them, but I do give the Pens the edge in goaltending either way. So I'll take Pittsburgh in a close one.
Absolutely, and going back to what Luke said, Paul McLean's mustache might give runner-up, might give Lanny McDonald and George Peros a run for their money for the best mustaches.
What about Joe Quenneville here?
Oh, Joe Quenneville's got a great one too. You know what? Dan Bilesma really looks sharp with that mustache.
He certainly looks like he needs a cigar in his mouth, I think.
Yeah, he
definitely completes the outfit.
Definitely. He ought to keep the mustache. He looks great with it. Definitely better than Sidney Crosby's mustache, eh? And certainly a lot of challenging games upcoming for Pittsburgh. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for tuning in as always. Luke, great to have you here. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Jason, always a pleasure talking hockey with you, and we'll see you next week.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And from all of us here at the Pens Iceberg, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving and have a fantastic week.